In terms of CVs, I've never sort of recruited in the construction sector. I'm guessing they're not too different, but if you said to me, what's the ideal CV for a management consultant, and I'd say, well, it's 2 pages, and it's about achievements and all that sort of thing. For a construction CV, are there any sort of key hints and tips, or any structure that would stand out to you more than another one?
Yeah, I think with construction, the decision makers in construction are very focused on their types of projects, the values of the types of projects that they take on as a business. And that's usually, a site engineer will win or lose a job based on whether or not he's worked on a similar job, not whether he's done that skill set that's needed on the job, but has he done it on the similar job?
Yep.
So it always surprises me how many people in construction, particularly project and contracts manager, because I feel like this stuff should be important to them anyway, but how many people don't list, the size of the project, the size of the teams, the numbers that surrounded their job, because that's what your employer, as a project manager and contracts manager particularly, that's what, surely that's what your bosses are looking for. So project types and project values, and what did you do? What was your actual thing? Not just manage the site, but what roles? We all know that there are different roles involved with management of a business, and different businesses allocate those to different job titles. So it's good to understand people's understanding of what they do and don't do. So I think that's a really key one for construction ones. Is what have you worked on and what did you do there?
Yeah, that's good, and that probably does echo more general advice about CVs as well. I think, as I've spoken to a few people, as I say, recently, who have been they're in the position of being made redundant, and looking at the CV, you can tell that it just there's nothing sort of grabs you. And I guess as a recruiter, you get quite used to, particularly if you're in volume recruitment, you get used to scanning a CV very, very quickly, and you sort of get into a pattern, don't you, of looking at you look at certain areas. You might look at education. You obviously look at work experience. You might look at location, and interests sometimes. But generally, it's those sort of key things. But mainly, it's what has this person done, and if the language is more, the team did this or the team did that. It's as you say, it's got to be about you, what your role was, and what you achieved, and also putting numbers on it. So if you're a salesperson, it's okay, so your role was to sell IT equipment, but what did you actually do? That's what's going to stand out. And I think candidates perhaps don't, and it sounds quite brutal, really, but especially when you talk about talent ATSs, sorry, applicant tracking systems and things like that. So where your CV goes in, and actually it might not even get in front of a human being until it's been through an element of being sifted out based on keywords, things like that. And it sounds sort of quite mechanical and industrial, but in a way it is, because I guess some companies get, Google gets like 2 or 3 million CVs a year, I think, or something like that. So and I'm sure big companies get thousands and thousands of CVs. So they have to have some way of sifting out. But as a recruiter, as a candidate, I think you don't appreciate the short bit of time that a recruiter actually has to look at your CV. So it has to grab them immediately. So putting those key achievements in, and if you looked at a CV of, as I say, if you say talking about a project manager and they've managed a flagship site, and it's come in on budget and it's come in on time and all that, that's the sort of thing you think, well, okay, this person clearly knows what they're doing. I'm going to take a further look. And I think as a recruiter, when I was in recruitment, you give it that sort of 20-30 second initial overview, and then something will stand out, and then you think, okay, I'm going to go back, and then I'm going to spend a couple of minutes probably looking at it properly. But the reality is, when you're working at a high volume, if it doesn't stand out to you, it will go to the side. And that does sound quite cold and brutal, but it's just the reality of it, I think. So it's good for candidates to know that.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you said there, sorry, was if you are an IT sales consultant, and I think that's a really key point. It's having worked at sort of big companies and around multi-specialist consultants and people who specialize in other things, there was never a one-size-fits-all for just a candidate. You have your best practice training, but different job titles and the people hiring those different job titles look for different nuances and different differences within the skill set. So I think for candidates, it's important as well to understand what do people actually look for in my market? What does my boss look for? Is it the common thing that I don't know, they need to be close to the office? Is it a lot of office time, or do we work remote, or is it salary bands that seem to be the sticking point? And I think understanding the hiring problems and wants in your own market is key to designing your own CV, because then you get to understand what's important. And IT sales guys should know that it's going to be very revolving around the numbers of what they've sold in IT. And likewise, every job title is going to have their own different thing.